Hello and welcome to another Geek vs. Sidequest bonus episode. Just me, Dylan, here today, and in the lead up to the Super Mario Bros. Movie, I wanted to go through and do my definitive Mario rankings. Yeah, that's right, ranking every Mario game I have ever played. I have a list of 40 games here I'm going to be ranking, and this is going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I did this recently for Fire Emblem, and in that I did kind of my history with the series when I got all the games, and kind of just a bit of a history of the series as well. I'm not going to do that for Mario because then I'd be here for 7 hours, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep this, to a nice pace. But just a quick anecdote on my history with Mario because I think it is important here, which is that my first console when I was a kid, it was a hand-me-down or it's from a pawn shop. I don't even know where it came from, but I have it in another room. Still have it. Is the NES, the original Nintendo Entertainment System, which I was born in '95, so it was by no means the most modern console at the time. But as a kid, I'm like 3 or 4 years old. I don't notice that. Like this is the most crazy thing I've ever seen in my life to that point. I don't even remember ever getting new games for it. I feel like we just had like 6 or 7 games, and that was like the entire library that I had of this thing. And some of those games were Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3. I remember there was like a Sesame Street game, this twin stick shooter called Captain Skyhawk, Aliens game, maybe like a golfing game, not the NES like tour thing, but maybe like a PGA sort of game. Weird collection of games, but of course Mario Bros. Trilogy. That's a nice trilogy to have. And yeah, I remember the first game that therefore I ever played in my life was Super Mario Bros. 3. You might be wondering, like, why would you start with 3? I mean, first of all, I think at that age, I don't even know if I had a concept of what a sequel was. So I think it was really just the box art. It was that bright yellow. Think about like Cyberpunk has that bright yellow that they use whenever they were delaying their game on Twitter or they had it on their box art. It really draws the eye, or like every Sony AAA game has big yellow ledges everywhere. Like it's like a warning color, right? And it draws the human eye. It's a pheromone for the human eye. And so I think that's probably why my kid brain was like, I want to play Super Mario Bros. 3. It had the yellow, it had Mario looking cool and fun and like kind of cute on the front. And so that was the first one I played, and me and my sister just endlessly played that thing. I don't think we ever beat it because you couldn't save on the NES, so we'd every time we boot it up, it'd just completely refresh the memory there. But we played it endlessly. We would do the like battle mode and 2 player, or just go through the game back and forth and stuff like that. And since then, I have been just forever a video game fan because of Super Mario Bros. 3. And then, I went back and played those other games as well on the NES, all those other ones that I mentioned. But then since then, I've always been a Nintendo guy. I because of the age that I mentioned there, being born in '95, having the NES, I went up to N64 from there and Game Boy Advance. So skipping Game Boy, skipping the SNES, those are kind of my two big blind spots in Nintendo history. I still have a couple of those games on this list. But yeah, since then, N64, Game Boy Advance, then had DS and GameCube and a Wii U, 3DS. Switch. And there's definitely ebbs and flows. There's been times where I'm like only playing Mario, or not Mario, but Nintendo stuff. Or there was, the 360 era. I was playing a lot of that stuff, or have it long swaths of playing mostly PC games or PS4. And now I'm kind of mostly Series X. But Nintendo is just kind of a constant for me. And because of that, all these consoles have had between like 1 to 4, maybe more Mario games. So therefore, Mario has kind of always been a constant for me as well. So there you go. That's my very, very brief history of Mario. I don't want to go through every game individually in terms of when I picked it up and all that stuff, because once again, that would take forever. This list also, I'm going to have it written out on Backloggd.com. If you don't use Backloggd, it's a great way to keep track of the games you're playing, the things you have on your list, things that are coming out and whatnot. So I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to go see a visual of this, because it's going to be hard to keep track of. There's 40 games here. So yeah, my rules here for how I determined what a Mario game is. It's pretty simple. Is the word Mario in the title of the game? That is pretty much the only precursor I use, because there's things like Smash Bros. Okay, that uses the Mario Bros. Kind of naming convention. Mario's in all those games, but not really Mario games. Luigi's Mansion, maybe you could say those are in the Mario game universe. They definitely are. Other Donkey Kong things as well. But I decided to keep it at just games that strictly have Mario in the title. I only have one version of games, so something like Mario Kart 8 was on the Wii U, and then Deluxe on the Switch. So I just kept Deluxe on the Switch rather. Don't have two versions. Game Boy Advance for Super Mario Bros. 3. There's a Game Boy Advance version. There's the regional NES version. I just have one version on here, so nothing is going to double up in that way. And this is pretty tricky to make. I mean, one, it's 40 games. That's a lot of things to rank. But also, it's kind of a battle of nostalgia and recency, because there is Mario games that I've revisited over and over and over, and I love them. And those ones will obviously float to the top of the list. But something like, I don't know, I played maybe a lot of this on the Game Boy Advance or even on the NES, and like haven't really gone back to it much, versus like even in the last few weeks, I've been picking up a lot of Mario games to play in the 3DS before that shop closes. And so it's like, man, the debate between like some of those games that exist only in my old memory as a kid versus things I've been playing in the last few weeks, it's hard to do. So I feel like I said at the top, this is my definitive Mario ranking. It is for, at the time of recording, March 24th, 2023, but I already have some other games on the 3DS that I want to pick up for that shop closes, and new Mario games are coming out all the time. So this list, I will probably do a revised version at some point, but I'm happy with having a nice around 40 for here. And I think that's pretty much all the preamble I wanted to get into. So I'm just going to quickly go through the games that are on this list so you know it's coming, and then we'll break it down. So for 2D Mario games, we have Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World. We have Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. New Super Mario Bros., New Super Mario Bros. 2. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which you could say that's a puzzle game, but it's a platformer puzzle. Super Mario Bros. 35, which no longer exists. Super Mario Maker. For the 3D games, we have Super Mario 64, Sunshine Galaxy, Odyssey, and 3D Land. For the kart games, I have all of them, all the mainline ones at least. Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart 64, Super Circuit, Double Dash, DS, Wii, 7, and 8 Deluxe. For the sports games, we got Mario Tennis, Tennis Open, Golf, Golf Super Rush, Strikers, Strikers Charged, Strikers Battle League, Super Mario Sluggers, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which you might not consider that fully a Mario game because Sonic's in there too, but I'm counting it. For the party games, I have Mario Party 2 and 3, Super Mario Party and Mario Party Superstars. That might seem kind of low. There's definitely other Mario Parties I've dabbled with, even with the Geekverse squad at some point. I know we booted up some GameCube or Wii one. I was looking at images. I could not figure out what one is, and I figured it's probably not even worth putting on this list. So I've definitely dabbled in a couple other ones, but those are the main ones I've played. And then for the weirdo games that don't fit into any of these other genres, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Dr. Mario, and Mario's Picross is what I have on here. I think really my blind spot, as you will have noticed, is the RPGs. And that's something I want to remedy, and there's a couple of these on the Nintendo Switch Online that I could check out there. But yeah, like Super Mario RPG, Paper Mario, and Mario and Luigi. I don't have any of those on this list because I've played a little bit of Paper Mario N64, and Mario and Luigi Dream Team was the pack-in game for the 3DS I got, the Luigi edition. So I've dabbled a little bit in those games, but I didn't. For those ones, I feel like you need to have a ton of experience to really quantify them on this list. Mario Galaxy 2, I feel like is really the blind spot. It's the only 3D one I haven't played, and even Galaxy 1 didn't even play until the 3D All-Stars Collection on the Switch, so that's even a more recent one for me. But Galaxy 2 feels like a big blind spot. I'd like to remedy that. I don't know why it was not in that 3D All-Stars Collection. Should have been, but anyway. And then the one sports game, so I obviously didn't have all the sports games. I think Strikers is the only one that I have every game in the series. There might have only been one Sluggers, too. Maybe there's 2 of them. Anyway, so I obviously have some blind spots there, but I think I have at least, like, I have a game or two in each of the different genres. You know, I have a tennis, a golf, a soccer, a baseball. The one that I really want to play is Mario Hoops 3-on-3 is the basketball game. I think it was on the DS. I've been trying to find it at used game stores in the last couple of years here because I just really want to pick that up. Even if it sucks, I just want to see what this thing's all about. So those are kind of my blind spots, and hope to fix some of those at some point in my life. But without further ado, where are we at here? 10 minutes. I got through that preamble stuff pretty quick. Let's get into the ranking itself. Going from bottom to top. So last place here is kind of a bit of a tie, but number 40, I put Super Mario Kart, and then 39, Mario Kart Super Circuit. Oh my God, that's hard to say fast. These games kind of feel identical. I mean, the Game Boy Advance is more or less the SNES level graphics and power and stuff like that, so that it's almost like the handheld version of what the SNES was, as Game Boy is somewhat that for the NES. It's not a one-to-one, but I say that because these games feel pretty much identical. They look very similar. I think the maps, it's hard to feel like any of them are really that notable just because of the visuals, the limitations of the visuals. The games control very poorly. There's not a lot of variety in them. Admittedly, the two games I played later on in my life through NSO, actually, both of them. And it's like, man, I play a Grand Prix or two, and it's like, I never need to touch this thing again. Obviously, with Deluxe sitting there, it's hard to justify. But even just going back, it's not even fun for like the history lesson, really. These games have just not aged well. Number 38, I have Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. This is a tricky one. It's one of those ones I mentioned with battling nostalgia versus recency. This is on the Wii, the one I played the first, I guess it was the first Olympic Games Mario. I think there's 2 or 3 of them. And, it's just one of those things where I've never revisited it. I don't even think I owned it. I might just rented it for a weekend. I just really have, like, no memories for it. And I think that's a notable thing. It's just like, man, if I can't recall, if I don't have a good memory or, like, for me, a big thing with remembering games is remembering who I played them with, who I experienced them with, or who I talked with the games about. Like Sonic and the Olympic Games. I don't know. Maybe I just played it single player, and that's why it's not notable for me. But just nothing comes up. It's weird. You might be like, well, why are you included on the list then? But like, I definitely played a good amount of it, so I feel like it's worth putting on here. But that was number 38. Number 37 is Mario Golf. It's not the original Mario Golf. I think. Well, I guess technically it is. Although, what was it? NES World Tour or something was essentially a Mario Golf game without Mario in the title. Anyway, this is the one on the N64. Once again, playing this one in reverse. Played it with NSO, so a little bit more recently, and just does not hold up well for me. The course is kind of boring. The gameplay just not really that satisfying. I don't like the minute-to-minute gameplay, and the ball's like hard to see because of the weird graphics. It's interesting to go back and see it just for the weirdo characters that are in the game. I can't remember any of them, but it's just like a bunch of human people that have never appeared before. It was something maybe they were trying with the sports games originally. Was like, let's get some other humanoid characters in here. But it's like, why not just use iconic Nintendo characters? No one cares about fucking Blimmy and Johnny and all these random people. So not a game I really had a good time going back to. This one might hurt some people, and I wanted to put this at 35 for the meme, but it's a little bit lower, which is Super Mario Bros. 35. That is the Tetris 99 equivalent Mario Bros. Game they had on the Switch for just a few months, I think. It was part of the 3D All-Stars push and whatnot, and then they took it offline, so you can't play it. Oh, I think you can still play it, in other ways. But yeah, I don't know. I played it a couple times, did a few runs, and it just never really hit for me. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it's because I'm not super duper in love with that original Mario Bros. Game. You'll see it coming up pretty soon here on the list. But yeah, I don't know. I think this one might hurt some people who played a lot of it. But I guess I played enough of it to be like, I'm not really interested in this. Not for me. Number 35, another divisive one here in the Mario rankings, Super Mario Sunshine. I'm not in the camp that I think this is an awful game by any means, because I think, honestly, from this point up for me, 35 and on, I think these are like good games. Like Mario and just Nintendo's quality is just higher than, some other developers and things like that. So I think, honestly, from this point up, every game I'm considering like, it's good. It's a solid game. It's just going to be, are they my favorites or not? And Sunshine is a weird one where I didn't own it as a kid, and I didn't even really care about it. Like the visual aesthetic, the island, was it Woohoo Island? Like the creatures that live on this island, visually never did it for me. I just never cared much about the visual style, the music and stuff. I don't know. It seems like it should have worked for me as a kid, but it didn't. I remember playing it at a friend's house, and then once again, 3D All Stars Collection, like trying it again, and just like, I don't know. I don't like the flood. I don't like the movement of it. I don't like the general mechanic of having to clean things up and whatnot. I think my favorite parts of the game are those missions when the flood is taken away and you just get like a very classic like Mario Galaxy, Mario 64 kind of platformer stage. But those are so far and few and far between that it's hard to like bank on it too much. So I think narratively it's actually kind of doing something interesting for a Mario game, but just not one I particularly care about. Number 34, we have Super Mario Party. This is the first Mario Party that was on the Switch there. It's an interesting game, actually. I don't own it, so I've not played a ton of it, but I've definitely played like 3 or 4 boards worth of games. And I think the mechanic of like collecting dice and collecting dice through getting characters on your roster and whatnot is pretty interesting. But the maps were pretty lackluster in that game. I think there was a lot of motion controlliness to it, right? If I'm remembering correctly. So some of the mini games fall a bit flat. I mean, it's a Mario Party game, so why am I talking about balance? But the balance does feel kind of out of whack because of those dice and things like that. Just wasn't immediately one of my favorites for a Mario Party. When the other Mario Party game came out on the Switch, I was much happier to see that one. Moving up to number 32, New Super Mario Bros. 2. So I think this might have been on the Wii U, but I have it on the 3DS. And yeah, I've actually just played this in the last week. I literally picked it up last weekend at a video game store, and I've been playing it since then. And yeah, it's low here for me. Obviously, I've not like had the time. I don't have any nostalgia for it. But to me, it just like, man, this thing feels completely devoid of any creativity whatsoever. For that reason, I should honestly put it lower than some of these other titles here. But it is like just it's a solid platformer. It controls well, looks good, and all that stuff. But it's like there's nothing really new to this formula. The levels are all the same worlds you're used to. It just feels like it wasn't trying anything. Really, the only new mechanics that I can gauge from being in the fourth world or fifth world, wherever I'm on, is that they really seem to double down on coins. There's like different ways to collect coins. You get like a coin block on your head that like shoots out coins, and there's like golden enemies. And it's like, man, I don't think ever what I wanted them to iterate on Mario was like new ways to get coins. Like I don't care about that. It's like in the first couple worlds you get up to like 20 plus lives, and so it takes away the stakes of like, oh, this game's so easy. You get so many coins. You get like 2 to 3 lives per level, it feels like. So I don't know. It's not a bad game once again, but it just I don't really care about it. I don't think I'll see it to the end. Number 31 on my list is Mario Tennis, also the N64 version of this, the first Mario Tennis game, I believe. And I think the introduction of Waluigi, for that reason alone, it should be a top 10 because Waluigi is great. But this is an interesting one because there's kind of a divide within Mario sports games. There's ones that really actually tone it back in terms of the craziness and just focus on mechanics and having a lot of movement options or different tricks you can do. I think of Mario Strikers Battle League as one of those, actually, where it really stripped away a lot of the chaos. There are still items and stuff like that, but it's just like a very mechanics focused game. And then there's other Mario sports games that just go all out with the ham. There's like just all sorts of crazy attacks you can do, items coming out of everywhere, just electrified shocks and all of this crazy stuff. Mario Tennis is definitely in that side of things where the special move seems like every rally there's multiple special moves going off, which are just these crazy moves where Waluigi's like floating in midair or Peach is doing these big flower moves. It's a fun game. I enjoy playing it. I don't think it's one I would ever really play on my own, just hone my skills or practice up, or I don't even know what kind of single player content's in there. I've only really played it with the Geekverse squad on the streams that we've done, and it's a fun enough game. I enjoy it. It's cool. Good times. Number 30 for me is Mario's Picross. I've played this with the NSO as well, and it's great. Picross is just very fun. Simple puzzle games. It's cool to have a little Mario Paint version over that. Not Mario Paint, but Mario, color scheme over it and stuff like that. So it was an interesting game. I've had some good time with it. One I'll just revisit every once in a while, do a couple puzzles, that kind of thing. Super Mario 3D Land is number 29. This is actually the packing game I got for the Wii U. I got that version that had this, and I think, what was it, Nintendo Land, were the 2 packing games there. And this is really cool. It's kind of, a mix of a hybrid. It does feel more akin to a 2D Mario game, but it is still 3D in the way these things are, but it's not quite the very small open world design of like an Odyssey, a 64, Galaxy Sunshine, that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting hybrid, and I really like it for that reason. Really cool game. Some, interesting power-ups, like the Cat Mario was new stuff. And just visually looks great. I think the Wii U, very underrated. Like, I love the visual of that. And I think even the Switch in many ways has kind of just stuck to the visual style that the Wii U really established. So really enjoyed this game. A lot of fun. 28, this one is going to be criminally low for some people. And sorry, not sorry about that, but it's gonna be Super Mario Odyssey. Yeah, weird. I did not own this game, did not pick it up at launch, and just since borrowed it from a friend and played through a few of the worlds, and it just does not do it for me. And it's hard for me to really quantify why. I think for me is the hat, the Cappy, and the movement options that come from Cappy don't really feel that good to me. I think the game's momentum never really feels good. You kind of get momentum if you're like rolling around and stuff, but it's not the kind of momentum I like to see. And I think I've just been so spoiled by some of the earlier Mario, the 3D Mario games that when I came to this one, I was just like, I just don't really like the movement. And so I have to admit, there is some like very creative worlds. It seems like there's a lot of content in there, a lot of variety and stuff like that. And I like some of the aesthetic choices with it, but yeah, just was not really one of my favorites. But it's above 12 other games on this list or whatever because it's still just a very solid, well-made game and all that. Number 27, I'm putting Mario Kart 7. This is Mario Kart on the 3DS. Once again, one that I picked up recently in the fear of 3DS shop closing. And I am shocked by this game. Really, really surprised by it because to me, it's like, man, Mario Kart 8, which is, kind of the de facto Mario game now and maybe the one of the best of all times. And it's the Smash Ultimate for Mario Kart. It's like, man, Mario Kart 7 did all of this. It had a very much, once again, the same visual style. It introduced the driving underwater in a big way. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like it did a lot more of that, and also flying the kite and stuff. It's like all that stuff that I associate with like, oh, those were new and fun features when I played those on the Wii U with Mario Kart 8. It's like, man, Mario Kart 7 actually kind of introduced all that stuff. So Mario Kart 8 really just brought in some new courses and maybe a power up or two. But yeah, Mario Kart 7 is really good. I highly recommend for anyone who hasn't played it. Like, definitely worth checking out. I guess one of the caveats with that is that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, pretty much the same game, but it's just bringing in all these courses from over the years. So it's a bit in the way that like Smash 4 has kind of been just completely nullified by Smash Ultimate because it's very much, it feels like a half step jump, but it just has more content. So I kind of do feel that way about Mario Kart 7, where it's like, what's really the reason to go back with Mario Kart 8 existing? But it's a very solid game. Really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. Number 26, Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. This is going to be the only Game Boy game, original Game Boy game, I should say, on this list. And that's because it was just recently added to Nintendo Switch Online, and that's when I first played it. Because as I mentioned, Game Boy is a blind spot for me. And this game was really cool. I really enjoyed it, played through the whole thing. It's got a more open world map where you can go to the 6 different worlds. That's what you're doing. Each world has a golden coin that you're collecting, and then you can go fight the boss, who's Wario. So that's very fun as well. But yeah, you can go to these 6 worlds in any order, and there's other like shops you can go to get some get some mushrooms or extra lives, things like that. So I really like that openness to it. The worlds are very cool. You go into like a giant mechanical Mario, and that's a world. There's like a Halloween pumpkin sort of world. There's intergalactic space world with moons and stars everywhere. So I feel like it's one that actually got very creative, where Mario can often be like, okay, you got your basic grass level, you get sand world number 2, then you go to water world, and then you go to like snow world, and then you go to whatever it is, like dark jungle world, all these things. It seems like they do the same things over and over again, and so that's why it was really fun for me to go back to 6 golden coins and get these weirdo worlds. And because they get like a bunch of weird enemy types that I've never seen ever used again in Mario games, so really cool. And I hope they add the rest of the Mario Land games onto the NSO service, because I'd love to go play all of them and see what they're about. I think the controls are just okay in this game, but they get the job done. They're good enough, so that's good there. Next up, 25 is going to be Super Mario, or not Super Mario, just Mario Party 3. This is one of the ones on the N64. Not one that I owned, and I've only really played it in recent times because over here on the Geek First podcast, Travis and Emily, that's one of their favorites. They own that game, so I've played it through them. And I love the N64 era for Mario Party, and so this is just more of the same. It's got a bunch of great mini games, some great maps, just a lot of fun. So it's weird. I've actually not played a ton of it. But even though I've only played however much I have, it still to me felt like it was in 20, it beat out 15 other games easily just because of loving that era of that series. Moving on, number 24, Mario Striker. Oh my God, Mario Strikers Battle League. This is the Switch version of the game. So this might seem interesting because if you listen to our review, at the end of our review for this game, me, Taylor, and Travis, I think Kirkland missed the review, maybe. We all did a brief ranking of the series, which, yeah, there's a trilogy game, so it's pretty easy ranking. In that ranking, I think I did put Super Mario Strikers, the GameCube one, below Battle League. And so it might seem like, okay, what's changed since then? And, actually, since then, like, the game has added some new content. There's been, like, 3 new maps and, like, 6 new characters, I think, and some pretty good characters like that Diddy Kong and Pauline, I think, and some cool additions. But yeah, I think for me, like mechanically, still potentially my favorite Mario Strikers game. But I think it's just already in the year, like less than a year that it's been out, that it just feels kind of like a soulless game in a way. Mechanically, it's sound, but it's like so just devoid of content. Really, the only incentive in the game is like, okay, get online and play with your friends online. But I don't know. I like the era when the sports games had like a bunch of mini games or special modes or a single player that was fun to go through still. And even then on the content side, even with the stuff added, it still is to me lesser than the game that came before it, Mario Strikers Charged on the Wii. So it's a solid game mechanically, and whenever I'm hanging out with the Geek First Squad, we will definitely be happy to boot this game up and play more of it. But yeah, it just has not, already in the year since it came out, not aged well for me. It feels like one of those kind of half-assed releases on the Switch, which there's a handful of those. Number 23 for me is going to be Mario Tennis Open. This is just kind of, to me, the complete opposite of what I just mentioned there with Battle League, where this has some, like, the tournaments are fun. I've only done 1 or 2 of them so far, but man, they are hard. The mechanics, this is one of those Mario, it's actually similar to Battle League in that it's very, takes out a lot of chaos. I don't even think there is like big special crazy mega moves you can do. And it's just very mechanics focused. The battle, or the bottom screen, because it's on the 3DS, has all the different moves you can do, whether it's like a cut or a top spin, back spin, things like that. And so you have a lot of different options, and you're trying to hit like these colored circles on the map to like get bonus strikes. But even those aren't like immediate kills. Like, your opponent can still play off them, and it makes for a really fluid tennis game. And really great roster of characters that is in there so far. There's a whole like item shop, so there's an incentive to do all the different modes in the game as you're getting coins that you can then use to go buy like fun equipment and stuff like that. And there seems to be a lot of different styles and whatnot. And then I think the thing that maybe puts it a bit over the edge is just some of the bonus game modes in there are really cool. There's one that's like essentially you're almost like playing tennis with yourself against a wall, which you do. A tennis court, they have like those sections where you can just practice strike and stuff like that. It's kind of like that, but that wall is instead of a screen of the original Mario Bros game, Super Mario Bros, and you're like hitting obstacles out of the way. You're like breaking blocks, hitting Goombas with the tennis ball, and then like the level's progressing. So I don't know how fully fledged out that mode is. I think there's different difficulty levels, so maybe a few different levels, or maybe even different games. Maybe you get a Super Mario Bros. 3 level. I should check that out. That'd be cool. But it's like, man, that's a really cool, interesting, unique mode. And it's not something you're gonna play for hours and hours, but it's cool. They have like a Mario Galaxy mode in there. You get the music, and you get a Luma that you're battling against. That's a fun and tricky mode as well. So it just seems like it really went above and beyond. Visually, it's great. So really enjoyed that one. Number 22 for me, Mario Kart Double Dash on the GameCube. So not one that I owned. I have a lot of nostalgia for the GameCube, though. Played this at friend's house growing up, played it later on. And I think for me, I wouldn't even, it's weird because I don't even think of it as like, if someone asks what's your favorite Mario Kart game, or if I think about that, Double Dash is not the first one that comes to mind. But when I was looking at this, I'm like, man, I've played all the mainline Mario Kart games, and I can't look at too many of them and say like, oh, here's this really unique mechanic that makes it stand out. And in the age of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe existing and being like the definitive Mario Kart, and like what's the reason to go back to older Mario Kart games? None of them really have much of a case for why you'd want to do that, because that game controls well, it's beautiful, it's more accessible, and it's got all sorts of other content, a lot of characters. But Double Dash, it has that mechanic that no other Mario Kart game has, and I think because of that, I don't think they'll ever go back to it. And so because of that, I think it will forever be a great game. The GameCube, those visuals have aged very well. So it still holds up. I like the collection of characters you have in that game is something a bit fun. Some good maps and all that stuff. So just really cool game. I really enjoyed it. I actually want to play some more of it. I could really go for some Double Dash. I'd love to see that given a Switch release in some way, because you can bring all those courses over to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but it's not going to be the same as playing it through Double Dash. Number 21 for me is Mario Super Sluggers, the baseball game. I forget. I think this is on the Wii. It could be a GameCube. I want to say it's Wii. We played this on the 24-hour stream this year over here, and man, I just love this game. It feels weird playing a Mario baseball game. It just feels like a weird collection or a weird mix match of the two, but it's just very fun. I like the collection of characters in there. There's a lot of different tactics you can employ. And yeah, I don't know, I like a good baseball game, and I truthfully have not played many in my life, so this is probably like one of my favorites. Just so much fun. Number 20, we're halfway through the list, is Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. So this is not a game I have complete yet. I really enjoy it though. It's a very interesting tactics game because it's a bit simplified, but it also does do some interesting mechanics, and I like that you get to. It's kind of, has that Mario World structure-ish where you're going through this 3D environment to the next location that will end up being the battle. Then after you complete a battle, you can walk around that area, move on to the next area. There's hidden areas and all that stuff. So it's pretty smart the way it combines the world with those battles. And the mechanics are pretty cool. I still need to get to the Donkey Kong DLC. I think I own it. Just haven't booted it up yet. So I should really get back in there and play some more of this one. It was really fun. It wasn't quite enough to justify me paying $80 for the new one when it came out, but at some point that game's going to go on deep sale. As this game, I got it for like $15. I'm sure that'll do the same for the sequel, and I'm going to pick that up at that point and check it out as well, because I'm really glad these games exist. They're interesting. And yeah, I mean, the only tactics game out of all these Mario games, and I can't even think of one that I haven't played that is quite like that. It's very unique in that way. Number 19, Mario Party Superstars. This is the Switch kind of remake, recollection of taking some of the best maps, some of the best mini games. I think maybe my main critique here is that there's not a ton of boards. I would love if they added a few more of those, which at this point, the game's been out for so long that I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. But even for what's there, it's so much fun. I've played through so many times. Not a ton of characters, but I like the list they have there. The mini games are fantastic. The game looks great. This is just kind of the way I'll be playing Mario Party for the next few years, I think. It just has enough variety going on for it, even though the map selection is not huge. Number 18 here, new Super Mario Bros. I hate the new moniker that Nintendo has done for the 3DS, for all sorts of weird games. But anyway, here's the one, new Super Mario Bros. This is released on the Wii, and it might have been on the DS as well. I put it on the Wii. I had that beautiful red box, which I don't have behind me here, but somewhere in my house. And yeah, strangely, I was critiquing new Super Mario Bros. 2 for not doing much to innovate on the formula. It's probably going to be the same case here, but this one is wrapped up in nostalgia for me, and I played a ton of co-op on this one. I do also remember it having a couple unique new mechanics, like it had that propeller upgrade you could get. I think there's maybe a couple other ones. But I just remember having so much fun going through this game, whether it was single player, whether it was multiplayer, doing all the collectibles and stuff like that. Just a great game, controlled really well, really fun. And so once again, while it maybe isn't a huge innovation for a 2D Mario game, I guess it came at the right time for me, right? Because on the GameCube, there was no new 2D Mario games. Even on the Game Boy Advance, strangely enough, there was no new 2D Mario games. I guess the DS would have had some, but I don't know if I played any of those. So jumping into it, it's like, I don't know, it was a good time for it to come out. Whereas I think new Super Mario Bros. 2, especially that I played it recently as well, it's like I don't really need more 2D Mario games in my life. I think I'm pretty much good, especially with like Mario Maker existing. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want just a Nintendo 2D Mario where they're just doing the same tricks over and over and over again. Whereas people with Mario Maker can get very creative. So jumping ahead, 17 is where I have Super Mario Maker. I've never picked up the sequel, but I had a ton of fun with this game on the Wii U. I remember picking up like day of because it was such a crazy hype idea, and all the Geek First Squad came over and we were playing through some levels and stuff like that. I made some like crazy weird puzzle level that they could play through and probably not figure out because it only worked in my brain, and in reality it was not a good level. But I loved the variety in this thing of the different skins you could put on it for the different Mario games and all the ones I was nostalgic for. It had the amiibo functionality. I remember putting like, Link and Pit and all these weirdo characters into the game. That was a really fun way to engage with it and how all these different powers. And whether it was like just downloading or checking out some people's like auto scroller levels or some difficult ones or some puzzle maps that people make, it was just such a cool thing. And I really should get Super Mario Maker 2 on the Switch because I think that would be a good way for me to engage with 2D Mario in the modern era. But man, I had so much fun with this game. It was fantastic. Number 16 for me is a Mario Golf Super Rush. That's the Mario Golf on the Switch, of course, the new one from a couple years ago. And yeah, me and my partner have just had so much fun playing through this game. We had fun with it at launch when there was not a ton of content in there, and then over the next few months, they added like another 10 courses, a handful of characters. It's one that's fun to go back to just because of the way you unlock stuff, right? Like each character can get 2 other club sets, and you just have to play the game a bunch to unlock these. And so every time I go back to it, I feel like I have I have good long-term goals or short-term goals. I can see, okay, Donkey Kong is about at that threshold. I'm about to unlock a new club set for him. I'm going to play him in this one. Or I'm like, man, okay, I have not like played Daisy at all. I should go play some Daisy, get closer to those club sets. So it's a fun long-term goal to go for. Some great courses here. Visually, the game like kind of sucks. Like the animations are awful. The textures on the ground are horrible. But like mechanically, it's very fun. There's a lot of different mechanics, like different characters will have different abilities and stuff like that. And I really enjoy that element of it. And there's a mode in there too where it's like a free for all mode where people just there's not taking turns. You're just going ham. Yeah, just such a fun time. Really, really enjoy Mario Golf Super Rush. One that I keep coming back to over and over again, which is a good sign. Very good sign for a new sports game. Number 15. This might seem low for some people. It actually seems high for myself when I look at it on the list. So I'm trying to find a balance here, but it feels right for me today, once again. And that is Super Mario World. Oh my God, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. So yeah, for some people this might seem low, and for me, I literally the first time I played this game was in the last week on the NSO. So it might seem super high. I might be giving it some recency bias. I know this is always one that people have heralded as one of the best Mario games of all time, and I'm happy to say that like when I was playing through it, I'm like, oh yeah, I immediately understand why. Very creative, very distinct art style, right? Because it has more of that Yoshi art style that became part of the Yoshi series, and Mario kept going down its route. So it has this interesting weirdness where it is a Mario game, but it's also a Yoshi game. The mechanic of throwing the egg around is really interesting, and the tongue. I guess it kind of introduced the bubble too, of like you get hit and then the bubbles up in the air. This has happened like multiplayer in like New Super Mario Bros. Stuff like that. But like the level design is actually great. There's so many ways that the levels are using like almost like what feels like one screen, but then you're like zigzagging back through it, and you're like unlocking a new jump pad, then you're jumping through the center of this level that you've been platforming for like up to that point. Just really, really great design. There's just so much creativity here that I've not seen done in Mario games, and I think like since then, because once again, I think from that point it diverged, and then Yoshi games became their own thing. But then even Yoshi games in recent times became so casualified and so simple and so much designed for like young children, it seems like, that they've kind of lost what made this game special. So this exists as a weird hybrid of the two. And yeah, I feel like it's never really been like we've never really gotten a true sequel to this game. Maybe we have, and I'm missing it. I should look into that. But it's a very interesting game. I had a lot of fun playing through it, and it's fun playing with my partner because like she's nostalgic for this one and played a ton of it, and so she just has so much knowledge on how to do everything, and that was cool to just see her knowledge of it too. So moving on here, number 14, Mario Strikers, which yeah is a game. This is the original one on the GameCube. A game I have. I don't want to use the word tumultuous. I guess I look at it and I'm like, man, I love the Wii one, so I've gone back to this one to play it with the rest of the Geekverse squad because it's the one they are nostalgic with. And I'm like, man, this game's kind of lesser at times. But the reason it is so high for me, even though mechanically it'd be way lower on this list for me if I compare it to some other, like, even a Mario Tennis Open or a Double Dash Kingdom Battle, like just mechanics game. Like I like playing some of those games more. But the thing is, I have so many great memories from this game now just because of all the streams and battles we've done with this thing through the podcast for the few years. It's become like a staple of who we are. Like I feel like we literally are the definitive Mario Strikers podcast, if such a thing exists. And I don't know, it's a great game. It's a very simple game when you compare it to the later games in the series, but it's very special. I love the animations of it. Once again, the GameCube aged super well, so this game therefore has as well. So I love it for that reason. We're gonna have a couple Mario Karts here coming up next. Number 13 is Mario Kart DS. And this is the it's a weird one. So actually, I'm gonna go like this. So 12 as well as Mario Kart Wii. These games are back to back for me. It was hard to pick which one above the other. They're weird ones where I played a ton of them when I was younger, when I owned them on the consoles at the time. I've not revisited them much in recent times, but I had great memories with them. It's fun whenever we get those maps added to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or the Booster Pass, because I'm like, oh yeah, I love this map. It's cool to see it again. Uh, and it's like, okay, I look back at them like, I don't even know, once again, what's unique about these games? What's the reason to go back for them? And honestly, there's not a ton. It's like I'd rather just play through Deluxe and like enjoy those maps that way. Mario Kart DS was weird. It had Rob as a playable character, which I would love to see that as one of those additions to 8 Deluxe. I don't think it's going to happen, but that was such a weirdo pick. The Wii, I know it had Diddy Kong. I think it might have had some other funky characters. I think it had a pretty large character list, and you could play as the Mii's and stuff like that. So yeah, it's these are weird ones where it's like I have nothing but great memories from these things, but I have not revisited them, and I don't know if I have much of a reason to now. But I really did love them. I guess the Wii, I guess with the Wii, what made it unique was the motion controls. You could drive that way, and so that was something different at the time. And at the time, I did really like motion controls. Now I'm kind of over it. I don't really need that anymore in my games. But yeah, there you go. 2 Mario Karts back to back. Number 11. This is going to seem low for some people. Super Mario World. I don't have nostalgia for this one because I didn't own it as a kid, because obviously I skipped the SNES, as I mentioned. And I know this was on Game Boy Advance, and I actually played it on a friend's Game Boy Advance when I was younger, but I never owned the game myself. And so I've really not played it until recently in a more meaningful way through Nintendo Switch Online, and it is fantastic. It's a great Mario game. The world map, as the name suggests, is fantastic. That was a great, I'd say, improvement from Super Mario Bros. 3 specifically, even though I liked how that's used there. The maps are great here. The visuals are fantastic. The music's amazing. Yoshi's in there. That's a huge mechanic. You got the cape, I guess. Is that what they call that? The yellow thing that you're floating around with? I think it's just called the cape. A lot of great mechanics introduced there. One that's aged very well. And honestly, I should go back and play some more of it. It's fantastic. I've never beat the game. I've probably got like halfway through it. It's fantastic. I love it. Number 10. We're into the top 10 here. Last quarter of this too. Super Mario Galaxy. Another weird one where, once again, did not own it on the Wii. Don't think I even ever rented it. Maybe I did rent it once upon a time, actually, now that I think about it. But more meaningfully, I've played it in recent times through the 3D All-Stars collection on the Switch. And this is one where it's like, man, this game is so creative. The worlds, the locations you're going to, and obviously the mechanics there of the gravity and the way that's messed up and these different planets and whatnot. Just such a unique game. The introduction of Rosalina and the Lumas, who are such iconic characters now from Mario. I love the setting of this. The music, this just straight up might have the best music of any game on this list, and potentially of any Mario game, and potentially just like all time. It's like an all-time great soundtrack. So good, so iconic. And yeah, it's been really fun playing through it again, especially in this last week. Me and my partner have been doing another playthrough. I'm playing a bunch of Mario stuff in preparation for this, but also just I'm getting hyped for that movie, and I want to play some Mario stuff. So Galaxy is just fantastic. And yeah, once again, I need to play Galaxy 2. I really am curious what the innovations of that sequel were. So at some point, I hope, once again, they add that to the Switch. Because if you've got Galaxy working, you can get Galaxy 2 working. Please, make it happen. I want to see it. Number 9, Mario versus Donkey Kong. A lot of people might not know what this is. Mario, and I didn't even know this until recently, but on the Game Boy, there's a game called Donkey Kong, kind of known as Donkey Kong 94. And it was a still platformer, it's like that original Donkey Kong game, but then it diverges and it becomes a bit of a puzzle game. And then the Mario versus Donkey Kong on GBA was the next iteration of that. And then there's been a couple more of these games since. But it's essentially a hybrid of platformer mixed with puzzle game. And Mario versus Donkey Kong on the Game Boy Advance, you are controlling these. You're not really controlling them, but there's these little mechanical Marios, twist-up doll kind of thing. And you have to get them to certain parts on the map. They'll might have to pick up a key for you, and then there's mix that with different platforming sequences. The boss battles are really cool against Donkey Kong. It is. It was a game that I really loved. I couldn't beat it. I remember one level I getting stuck on. And in this last week, man, I've been looking frantically around my house trying to find my cartridge because I know I still have it, but I cannot find it. I really wanted to replay it recently. So I'm going to find it at some point here and jump back into this thing. But nothing but amazing, amazing memories from this game. Really unique. I think that's why it stands up on this list. I've not played another Mario vs. Donkey Kong game as well. So it's the only thing on this list that is quite like it. I love the Game Boy Advance like visuals and the music as well. So that's obviously just a nostalgic thing for me. So yeah, it's a weird one. I've not played it in a very long time, but it got to me it was like immediately a top 10 contender, top tier contender, even though I haven't played it in a while. So really want to find that cartridge, and I would love if they added that to Nintendo Switch Online. That would be fantastic with the GBA. I'd love for other people to check that out, and I want to revisit as well. If I can't find my cartridge, I want to play this game again. So, yeah, really, really cool game. Number 8, Super Mario Bros. 2. Yeah, so this is a weird one. Once again, I played Mario Bros. 3 first on the NES, but I owned this one back in the day. And I remember even back then, I was like, man, this is a weird game. Which at the time, I had such a small reference for what games were, but I still immediately felt this was weird. It was a strangely scary game, when you go into those background, you go through like those hidden doors, and then you're in this like black and blue aesthetic. I remember that being kind of creepy. The mask that would chase you around, kind of like the son of Mario Bros. 3. The aesthetics had like a generally kind of weird look to them. Birdo, also terrifying, like looking boss. And so obviously part of that is because I was a kid, and I don't know, I guess I was a frightful child, I suppose. But it seemed like kind of weird and scary at the time. But I still like it was also fascinating for that reason. The design of these levels is super weird, and the way you go through it, having the different characters to play as, right? Like Mario and Luigi, pretty classic the way those characters are differentiated. But like playing as Peach was a really cool thing for me. I think you can play as Toad in the game too. But yeah, Peach had the float, which became such an iconic part of her moveset in Smash Bros. So I always love that. That's kind of an homage to Super Mario Bros. 2. That's where the turnip pole came from as well. Just a weird game. But yeah, it's whenever I go back to it, I'm like, man, I do enjoy this. This is just fun platforming, fun, weird level design. It was definitely okay. Mario Bros. 1, like this is the structure of these things. Weird experimental game next, and then Mario Bros. 3 was back to formula and like just a refinement and added a bunch of features. But I really am glad this game exists. If anyone's not played it for whatever reason, like definitely go back, check it out. It's on this Nintendo Switch Online, worth going back playing. Number 7 for me is going to be Mario Kart 64. This is my first one in the series that I played, and just played a ton of it as a kid. I loved it so much, and I've revisited over the years, and it still holds up for me. The controls can be a bit tough, but I think I've played so much of it that I'm used to it. The maps are so iconic for me, a lot of great creative designs, and I'm glad that a ton of those have been ported over to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at this point. So it is one where, yeah, it's like I don't have much reason to go back to it. Also, it's like only 8 players in a race. I like that we're now up to 12. That's more fun, but really, really great game for me. Really nostalgic hit. Just one I play endlessly on the N64. Number 6 for me, Mario Strikers Charged. Mario Strikers is the second one. Is on the Wii. And man, I love this game. This was definitely deep chaos for the Mario Strikers series. Out of the 3, it is by far the most chaotic, where Hammer Bro, his dodge is he jumps up in the air and pulls out a gigantic hammer, smashes it on the ground, and kills anyone in like a 10-foot radius. Like just wild, zany kind of gameplay there. And because of that, you get like what feels like free goals, right? Like instead of having time, a bunch of passes and stuff, you can still do that. But it's more about like, okay, if I get a bit of a breakaway and do a charge shot, I can like just straight up knock the goalie out and then get a free goal, which is very janky, but it was very fun, and each of the characters felt very unique. For me, it was the best mix, too, of roster building in the Mario Strikers game, where Battle League is like every character is on the same level, and so you just pick between all the, well, we're previously captains, now we're just like the roster of characters, and there's no sidekicks, and so you just pick who you want. I didn't love that. In the original Mario Strikers, you picked your captain, and then you picked like, I want Birdo or I want Toad, and then you get 3 Birdos, 3 Toads, whatever it is, and that's who your, left, right wing, and defense were. But I really liked the mix that Strikers Charged had, where you pick your captain. Each captain was supposed to be special. They had a special move that only captains could do. They'd always be at the front. And then you'd pick your 3 units who you want. So you could have a mix. You'd have a Hammer Bro, have a Birdo, have a Dry Bones on your team. There's a great, like, big roster of characters. I think even more than Battle League has added. Ton of maps. There was both janky maps and just plain Jane maps. So yeah, I got a mix there. The campaigns or the tournaments, I guess you could do, were really fun and really hard. I could never unlock PD Piranha. I could never beat that campaign as a kid. It was so hard. The motion control part is probably the jankiest thing with this, where if you get the supercharged strike, whatever that's called in the game, you could fire up to 6 balls at someone and they would have to stop it with motion controls, like moving the Wiimote around. And so that's, potentially not great, but I don't know. I love this game so much. It was one that I played so much of. And yeah, it was my first Mario Strikers as well. So of course that's going to be a special place as well. I loved soccer growing up, so it was a perfect fit. Number 5 for me, we're to the top 5. Mario Party 2. This for me is a nostalgic hit for sure, but I just have so many great memories of this game. The roster, I think there's 6 characters you can play from, but I remember Donkey Kong being in there and Wario. I just loved the game. The maps, I didn't even really play much of them. Honestly, when I was a kid, all I did was go to the minigame hub and just play minigames over and over and over again. Whether it was that platformer one in the sky or Skateboard Scamper or Hexagon Heat, all these iconic minigames, Jump Rope Challenge, that one. Just, man, I love this game so much. The visuals for me, I love the the early janky N64 graphics going on there. And really, this was the only Mario Party I played for years. As you notice on this list, 3 I mentioned playing later on in my life. Didn't really have any GameCube ones, didn't have any Wii ones, didn't have any handheld ones. So this truly was my Mario Party for 90% of my life. And now I've been branching out and playing some of the newer ones and stuff. And I love in Superstars when we're doing an homage to a Mario Party 2 minigame and stuff like that. So I love this game so very much. I think this is one that could drop over time, potentially. But man, it's on the Nintendo Switch Online, and I love playing it again. The maps are cool too. Oh man, now I'm thinking about some of the boards, even though I didn't play a ton of them, you'd get different themes. So there's the Western world, and Mario would have this whole cowboy outfit going on and different stuff like that. It was such a creative and goofy and silly game. So I have a lot of love for that one. Number 4 here, and this one has a chance to go up the list because it's still receiving new content, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I've brought it up a lot in this list so far, and that's because it is essentially going around town to town, killing all the other Mario Kart games, and bringing them in. It's collecting the Infinity Stones from all the different Mario Kart games to create just the Infinity Gauntlet of what is the best Mario Kart game. Now that they're adding new characters as well, that's awesome to get some of the other, Birdo is a clear omission, but get some other favorites in there, some other weirdos, why not? But man, this just has the best collection of courses. It has the tour courses. I'm still waiting for Vancouver as a Canadian, as I live in Vancouver. I really want that map. Please give it to me. But man, this game's fantastic. Mechanically, it's great. It has all the way up to Purple Boost, which I really like. So it can be difficult at 200cc or mirror mode. Such a variety of courses. How many courses in there? There's probably going to be 100 by the time this thing's done with the DLC. We're still getting more of this. So just, once again, the definitive Mario Kart, the Smash Ultimate of Mario Kart. It is amazing. Love it so much. Play it all the time. Number 3. We're into the top 3 here. Dr. Mario. This one might seem weird. It might seem very high for some people. For me, this is not an age-old debate, but for me, it's Tetris versus Dr. Mario. Similar, kind of, dropping blocks. Which one's better? Oh, everyone's going to say Tetris, right? Tetris, everyone loves Tetris. But me, I love Dr. Mario. It's so much fun. And really, I owned an NES, but as you may have noticed, I did not mention it. I did not own it on the NES back in the day. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think I actually have played somewhat of the Dr. Mario 64 through Nintendo Switch Online. That's not on the list. Whatever. It's fine. I'm not going to go back now and change it. I like the nice even 40. But Dr. Mario, man, just that gameplay loop is so much fun for me, the different combos, and I feel like I just keep learning different techniques and things like that I can do. And it's just one of those evergreen things. I can always come back and play it, or if I'm just on a bus ride or on a plane or something, I'll just play Dr. Mario for hours. If I need to kill time, that is a perfect way to do it. So yeah, I got it through the Wii U eShop, I think, is how I owned it. So that's how I like when I first played the game. So only in the last maybe 6 or 7 years, but it's been a while now, and I just love it so much. It is so much fun. I'm always trying to get people to play it with me. No one wants to, and I also have played so much of it, and other people who haven't played it before, if I were playing against each other, I kind of just crush them a little bit. So if anyone out there wants to play some Dr. Mario through Nintendo Switch Online, let me know. The Dukes are up. Let's challenge. I'm ready to go. Number 2 for me, Super Mario Bros. 3. So yeah, this is obviously going to be wrapped in nostalgia. It's the first game I ever played in my life. But it is one that I have revisited a lot because I have it on the Game Boy Advance. I actually have the cartridge right behind me on this table. I don't know if you can see that in this YouTube video. Probably not. Anyway, it's on the table behind me. So I've played it again and again and again, Nintendo Switch Online. But once again, I had those memories just playing with my sister endlessly. I love the visuals of this thing. The music is fantastic. I remember the white blocks, being able to go behind the stage was such a cool thing. I love the setup of this game. That's almost like a stage play, is the way it's framed. And then you're like seeing this play, which is then the game. Really interesting framing for it. I thought was kind of cool. The co-op element of it was very fun. And yeah, it's been maybe critiqued over the years for having slippery controls. But once again, for me, it's the first 2D platformer. It's also the first video game I ever played. So like this is what 2D platformers feel like to me. Everything else feels like a divergence. So yes, it maybe is a bit slippery, but it's also just like that was the default for me for like most of my life. This is what platformers feel like. The openness of the world, I think for me, is what maybe put it above 1 and 2 at the time. And getting a hammer and breaking through a block and discovering like a new hidden area of the map with had hidden stages or bonuses and stuff like that. The pipe world, the big giant world. I'm messing up the names of these things. Forgive me there. This weird sky world where you go through that temple and you go up into the sky. That was like a very interesting structure. Really, really love this game. Holds a very special place in my heart. Got me started on video games. I owe a lot to it. Without it, I might not be here today doing this ranking and all that. So, love that game very, very much. And it holds up. It's still great. And number 1 for me. This is not even a question. Easily number 1 when I'm making this list. Love it so much. Super Mario 64. So as well, probably my first ever 3D game that I've really played. And just amazing controls still to this day. It's a bit tight and stiff, especially if you play it on N64 where that controller sucks. It can feel a bit wonky, but I think it just really truly has a learning curve to it. And even still, like I feel like there's an infinite learning curve. I mean, look at speedruns for this game. I think that's honestly a big reason why it is number 1 for me. This is my favorite speedrunning game of all time. Not even as playing. I've learned a few techniques and I was in it for a little bit trying to get into it. But mostly just as a viewer, just the most entertaining, fun game to watch just because it's so fluid and fast-paced and crazy. And there's so many moves that you can do, right? Whether it's like the long jump or the backwards long jump, whether it's like the 1-2 triple jump, whether it's the quick turnaround pivot backwards jump, wall jumps, the dive forward, whether that's on the ground or in there, those feel different. Just whether it's a crouch and then you hit jump and you do like that big, triple backflip, whatever that is. Just so many great moves, and the way that they all connect together to create like what just feels like these huge combos of movement. And then the maps, like obviously it's N64, so they're limited in terms of detail, but a lot of creativity in the maps, whether that's, wet, dry world or the one where you can go into the giant or a smaller version of that world, or like the sand level going inside that pyramid and all that stuff. Like so many great levels. The music is just ingrained in my head and so iconic. I loved exploring the castle as a kid, going around and just being like this playground where once again the movement's so fun that, that's the difference between like Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3 is like you're going around this world map and that's awesome to experience and have like a greater context of where you are, but to be able to just like enjoy this amazing movement system as you're going between the different worlds and jumping into these paintings and like, yeah, what dry world, once again, like jumping into the painting at different heights changes what the level is, or like the tick-tock clock, and depending on what time you go in, that'll change how the platforms are moving. Like such great mechanics going on there. The boss battles against Bowser were super fun. Just such an iconic game for me. I love it so much. It's just some of the best feeling 3D platforming of all time. Truly, it's fantastic. So one I'm always happy to revisit, always have to go back to, and more so, honestly, at this point in my life, I just kind of enjoy it for the speedrunning aspect. Just watching the new world records when those happen, or seeing someone like Armada, the Smash player, get into it and watching his runs or something like that. If you've never watched a Super Mario 64 speedrun, please do yourself a favor and just go on YouTube, do 120 star or just 70 star. Definitely don't do like the any percent, like those ones where you don't even get any stars and skips like that. Those ones, they're interesting to watch, but they're not as fun as watching people like what is the quickest possible way to get every single star in the game and seeing all these crazy movement options you can do. It's such a great game, and I love it so very much. So there you go. There's my list. There's my top 40 Mario games. Once again, this list, if you want to see it visually written out, check that description. Go check it out through my Backloggd page. It's up there. And yeah, this list is ever growing. I'm excited to do this again in the future when I pick up some more games. I really want to go check out some of those RPG games. And yeah, in the comments, whether you want to join our Discord and talk about this, like I would love to hear what everyone's favorite Mario games are, favorite Mario memories, and all that. Because this movie looks great. I'm very excited for it. And yeah, I'm just in that Mario mood right now. So thank you everyone so much for listening to me ramble about Mario for an hour here. And I don't know what my next rank. Actually, I think a little, for everyone who listened to the end, a little tease about what's coming next. I think for me, the next ranking I'm going to be doing is Zelda. Before Tears of the Kingdom comes out. I've not played all the Zelda games, but I've played enough of them to have a fun little discussion there. So I think that'll be the next ranking I do. And then I did Fire Emblem, did Mario here. Zelda should be next. And then who knows down the road what will come after that. But thank you everyone for listening. Go have fun. Go play some Mario games. And I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.